From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. First, the headlines. U.S. drug overdose deaths took 96,000 lives. 90 more arrested as victims of climate chaos descend on White House. No tech for apartheid. 40-plus groups demand Amazon and Google ditch Israeli military. People aged 60 and older should not take aspirin, U.S. panel. Norway suspect who killed 5 was known to police. Our top story tonight. The number of U.S. drug overdose deaths jumped nearly 30% from March 2020 to March 2021. That's according to newly released figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. There were over 96,000 lives lost during that time. The CDC specifically looked at deaths when the coronavirus pandemic was at its peak. A 30% increase from 2019 to 2020 was the highest increase since 1999. Opiates account for the largest number of drug deaths. Another 90 people were arrested outside the White House on Wednesday, bringing the total number arrested in the last 3 days to 300. This was in protests by activists this week who are calling on President Joe Biden to block all new fossil fuel projects and declare a climate emergency. One campaigner who is battling a proposed petrochemical complex in a polluted region of Louisiana said people are dying rapidly and that the president is letting us down. Demonstrators from Alaska, California, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Texas shared how fossil fuel development and extreme weather, worsened by rising temperatures, are affecting their communities. Over 40 grassroots groups on Wednesday announced a campaign to amplify the efforts of activists around the world working to stop profiteers of Israeli apartheid. The No Tech for Apartheid campaign was launched yesterday. Its organizers include the American Friends Service Committee, the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Movement, or ABDS, and Jewish Voice for Peace. In a statement, the campaign said that as the Israeli military bombed homes, clinics, and schools in Gaza and threatened to evict Palestinian families from their homes in Jerusalem this past May, Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud executives signed a $1.22 billion contract with Israel. Called Project Nimbus, this was to provide cloud technology to the Israeli government and military. The campaign stressed that by doing business with Israeli apartheid, Amazon and Google will make it easier for the Israeli government to surveil Palestinians and force them off their land. The No Tech for Apartheid campaign's announcement comes one day after hundreds of Amazon and Google workers condemned their employers for complicity in Israel's human rights violations against Palestinians. In an open letter signed by more than 500, employees called on tech giants to cancel Project Nimbus. They said it allows for further surveillance of and unlawful data collection on Palestinians. They also said it facilitates the expansion of Israel's illegal settlements on Palestinian land. International critics have argued that Israel's ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians through various forms of legalized segregation constitute a form of apartheid. Last April, Human Rights Watch issued a report concluding that the Israeli government has and continues to practice apartheid against Palestinians. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force said Tuesday that people aged 60 and older should not take aspirin for heart disease and stroke prevention. The independent panel of experts warned aspirin use can cause harm, besides lowering the chance of a first heart attack or stroke. The most serious potential danger is bleeding in the stomach, intestines, and brain. About 1 in 3 deaths stem from heart disease and stroke in the U.S. The task force said people between the ages of 40 and 59 who are at higher risk for cardiovascular disease should consult with doctors on whether to start taking aspirin. In international news, a Danish man suspected of killing 5 people with a bow and arrows in Norway was previously known to police, officials said Thursday. 4 women and 1 man were killed and 2 others injured on Wednesday in the town of Kongsberg. Police said they had previously been in contact with the man over fears he was becoming radicalized after he had converted to Islam. A November 2020 report by the UN's Office of the High Commissioner found that Norway's counterterrorism measures target Muslims in the country. However, the deadliest attack in the country was after far-right extremist Anders Breivik massacre of 77 people in 2011. Breivik committed the crime because he thought they were soft on Islam. Gunfire killed 4 people and wounded 30 at a Beirut rally organized by the Shia Hezbollah and Amal movements in Lebanon on Thursday. Demonstrators were demanding the dismissal of the lead judge into last year's port blast, which killed 200 people. Lebanese television broadcast images of men carrying rifles and heavy weaponry. Lebanon is in the throes of one of the worst economic depressions since the mid-19th century, according to the World Bank. Inflation and poverty rates have skyrocketed in the past 2 years, and basic goods are often hard to come by. Several police and ethnic Serbs were injured in renewed clashes Wednesday in northern Kosovo. This was in raids targeting smuggled goods, sparking more tensions in the already uneasy region beset by ethnic strife. The violence prompted an urgent call for calm from the European Union. It comes in the wake of a weeks-long standoff between Serbia and Kosovo over border controls, marking the lowest point in ties in a decade. Wednesday's unrest came as police launched raids in 4 regions of Kosovo aimed at people smuggling Serbian-origin goods into the country. According to police, the crowd used stun grenades, firearms, and hand grenades to prevent and attack customs and police officers on duty. Kosovo claimed independence from Serbia in 2008. This was almost a decade after the end of a war between pro-independence fighters and Serbian forces. Serbia still does not recognize Kosovo's sovereignty. Algeria said Wednesday that security officials thwarted a plot by a separatist terror network to carry out armed attacks in the country, according to the country's official channel. The state-run agency reports that the plot was planned by external parties, including Israel and a country in North Africa, which it would not disclose. The statement said 17 suspects were arrested as they were preparing to carry out armed attacks that would harm the country's security. The Kabila Independence Movement, known as MAK, is a separatist group established in 2002 and based in Paris. It seeks to split the Berber-populated region of Kabila in eastern Algeria from the rest of the country. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier said Wednesday that the West has failed in its political goals in Afghanistan in the wake of the country's takeover by the Taliban. Steinmeier made the statement at a televised special ceremony in Berlin, paying tribute to German soldiers who served nearly 20 years in Afghanistan. He added that, "I hope that in 20 years we will not look back at this crossroads and say resignation and withdrawal were the answer to Afghanistan. It would be the wrong lesson." More than 150,000 German troops served in the 20-year mission. French police have received a daily average of about 49 reports of rapes involving minors in 2021. According to RTL News. Law enforcement agencies also reported an average of 68 cases daily of sexual assault and sexual harassment of minors. The disturbing reports come in the wake of legislation adopted by Parliament in April that criminalizes sex with children under the age of 15. Offenders face prison time of up to 20 years. A recent investigation found 216,000 minors were sexually abused within the French Catholic Church between 1950 to 2020. France has also recorded an increase in rape cases following the emergence of the Me Too movement, which shed light on sexual harassment and sexual abuse. At least 10 people were killed when suspected terrorists attacked a mosque in western Niger, the country's defense minister said Wednesday. Isufu Katambe told the media the assailants riding on motorcycles attacked a mosque during prayer time in the prefecture of Bani Bangu in the Tillaberi region. The victims were praying. The attack took place on Monday in the village of Tiziguru, in a region where Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso meet. Since early this year, attacks by suspected terrorists have intensified in the area around Bani Bangu and nearby towns in the region. Targeting civilians and the army, they are blamed on ISIS in the Greater Sahara and an al-Qaeda-affiliated group. Since the beginning of the year, more than 500 deaths have been recorded, according to official data, and thousands have been displaced, fleeing the violence. More than 74,000 Yemenis have been displaced from their homes since the start of this year due to ongoing fighting, according to a UN agency. According to the International Organization for Migration, an estimated 12,413 Yemeni households have experienced displacement at least once. Most displacements resulted from the increased conflict in central and southeast Yemen. In recent months, Houthi rebels have stepped up attacks to take control of the oil-rich Marib province in central Yemen. Yemen has been engulfed by violence and instability since 2014, when Iran-aligned Houthi rebels captured much of the country, including the capital, Sana'a. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. For today's in-depth analysis, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. ISIS is back in the news. It came through Afghanistan, ISIS-K or ISIS-Khorasan, and it's killing almost 50 people while worshipping. And news keep coming up from Africa. Recently, another news item that some major person was arrested in Iraq. So is ISIS back? And just yesterday, we heard news from Norway that a person who was later identified as a Muslim convert of Danish origin was found who killed 5 people in Norway. So what is going on here, and should be worried about it? We thought ISIS thing is over. We have someone who have spent quite a bit of time preparing the Muslim community in America to handle the challenges of ISIS ideology, and that is Daisy Khan.
Thank you.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me, Brother Mujahid. Hopefully, I didn't have to be here under these circumstances, but this is the world we live in right now.
Daisy Khan is Executive Director of WISE, which stands for the Women's Islamic Initiative for Spirituality and Equality. So, should we consider that ISIS is back?
So from the work that I've been doing, especially understanding ISIS and their modus operandi and their ideology, all we did was we defeated them territorially in Iraq. but there are elements of ISIS that still remain. And the ideology that they have been promoting, which we have to make a distinction, their ideology, which is a political ideology, has nothing to do with the theology of Islam. And that is why some of us who have been working in this area had to make a very concerted effort to de-link the religion of Islam from the actions of terrorists. And terrorists everywhere, and we can see them all over the world, no matter what religion they are. And we would have another show just to discuss all the other religions which are also weaponizing their religion for political aims. So the problem of ISIS is they have some political agenda which is not clear to any of us as to what it is. But yeah, they have taken root in Afghanistan and have paired up with elements of Taliban that do not want to be part of the governance or have some sort of an alternative agenda for themselves. And so they will pose a very big threat to Afghanistan, and they will use that territory all over again to then expand and bring other disgruntled people from around the world to join their cause. So this is a concern, not just for us Muslims, because as you know, they impact Muslims the most. Muslims are their greatest number of victims, as you just saw in Afghanistan. How many people were killed in Afghanistan just yesterday, and that terrible school shooting that was also committed by them, where 250 girls were killed. So everything it has a political aim behind it. They are trying to send a political message to whoever is in governance at the time, and they will actually be a great threat for the current Taliban that is trying to form a government.
Now, the Norway person, according to their police, is a Danish Muslim who converted to Islam, and they were already worried about his radicalization and were in touch with him. Last week, there was a trial in Chicago in which another person who converted to Islam is a student at the DePaul University. He was entrapped by FBI posing as ISIS and something like that. So have you in your research found that convert Muslims somehow are more vulnerable to ISIS ideology, or it is just just happened to be that way?
So from our research, there is no one size fits all, and there is no one profile of a person that falls into the trap of a recruiter. It really is just a person who happens to have certain vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities can be, they can be psychological, they can be relational, meaning they have bad, they don't have a family relation. It can be political because they disagree with their government's position. Or it can be social, that they're somewhat isolated. And these vulnerabilities can affect really whether it's a convert or a born Muslim. And so, or somebody, who is not even of the Muslim faith. As we know, there are many people. Breivik was a very good example. Breivik was inspired by Christianity, and he was a Christian. But the problem that we Muslims face in the West particularly is that when a convert or a Muslim commits an act of terror, it is immediately linked to the religion of Islam. Whereas a Breivik, or somebody who was inspired by Christianity, as we know right now in the United States, a lot of our white supremacist groups, which, by the way, I'm in the process of writing a book on that, are actually inspired by Christianity, and they're trying to save Christianity, Western Christianity, but we don't link them to Christianity. But we always make this link with Islam as if somebody who gets radicalized or has something to do with Islam. So once we stop doing that, I think we'll be able to solve the problem better and understand and focus on the vulnerabilities and do some community outreach, because I think at the level of law enforcement, this issue is not going to be solved. It's going to be solved at the level of the community, which really has to step in and look at the root cause of why people act out the way they do.
I'm glad you mentioned about the connection of faith people normally make to a criminal act. In Norway, the same thing happened. The person who killed 77 people about almost 10 years ago, saying that they were soft on Islam, he was a Christian, but they connected him with some ideology. And now this person who also committed a crime, instead of saying he was connected to political ideology, or if it is true ISIS, mentioning that, they just simply headline comes out, he was a convert Muslim. So associating religion immediately seems to be a tendency. If a criminal is Muslim, I mean, yesterday I saw, their Prime Minister of Norway says, well, we're exploring if it was a terrorism. I say, if he's a Muslim, then they're going to call it a terrorism. But a guy using arrows to kill 5 people should be enough to call it a terrorism. You don't have to verify what religion he was or what country he was to call it a terrorism. So you pointed out to the right thing. Tell us, what is the common thing about the ideology of whether these are Christian right-winger, which you're writing about now, or the ISIS type of people? What is the ideological component which allows them to lower the respect for other humanity?
Yeah, so really, first of all, there is in their mind, there seems to be some sort of a problem which they attribute to another group, or what we call the in-group and out-group. I mean, our group is under threat by another group, and so the other group then we have to act on it. And usually we have to use violence to act on it, because without violence, we're not going to be able to achieve or make this change. So that is at the heart of it. And that is why people can get brainwashed. If people are in certain circles where they're hearing certain things and the problem is magnified in their minds. And once again, I said, these are vulnerable people that already have some sort of mental issues. And it's very easy to lure people into believing something. So that is at the heart of it. And the way they do this, they justify their violence, is because they actually think that they are trying to solve a problem, a very big problem that affects their community, that affects the world. And in their minds, they use religion if they want to. And I'm not talking about this particular person. I'm speaking in general terms, because that gives them the moral authority. So the moral authority to act and to take another human life is then justified in their mind. So ideology serves a very important purpose, because religion, or any kind of ideology in the case of Hitler, can be a huge mobilizing force for people to act upon and feel that they're justified.
One of the things which you mentioned is there is something political in their mind. And mother of politics is the occupation and war and cry for freedom and democracy. So do you think if there is more freedom and more democracy in the Muslim world, do you think the political violence will go down?
Well, one of the factors, as I mentioned, there is no one factor, what we call push and pull factors, why people get pushed and what is the pull on the other side. And one of the major pushes for people is that they feel that they do not have enough political representation, or in other words, they are being somehow ruled by authoritarian rule, which is not justified. Their people have not given their bayah, and they cannot change the political structure, or they're unable to change the political structure. So therefore, they feel that they have to use force, and violence is necessary to do that. So yeah, I think that if we went back to Islam and we went to the concept of bayah, which the Prophet, people gave bayah to the Prophet and said, "You're my leader." And people gave bayah to every other leader after that to be recognized as a legitimate leader. So the modern day concept of bayah is democracy. People vote and they choose who they want to be represented by. And so if there was if we acknowledge that democracy is fundamentally an Islamic value, Islamic concept, And then I think we can usher in more democracy and more representation for people and lessen the need for these people to do it by force.
What can America as a country, but as a government, can do to reduce the chances of terrorism in America? Because I just wonder if that Norway person was doing that on the streets of New York.
Yeah.
What will be the media like for the Muslim community? So what is it which government can do? Because Muslim community, you're saying that no one can do anything. It need to be a multiple thing, and you thought the police and the government have limited chances, but Muslim community can do more. So could you dwell on it, what government can do and what Muslim community can do?
So the government has already done something very important in the United States, which it did not do after 9/11, which really impacted the Muslim community so severely for so many years. We were lumped into one camp, and all of us were seen through the national security lens. So I, as a Muslim, as much as suspect as anybody else because of my religion. And if I participated in certain activities, maybe somebody was looking on to see what I'm doing, which conferences I'm going to, just simply by the virtue of my religion and the faith that I profess. But this has changed because of the rise of white supremacy. And there's been a widespread acknowledgement in the United States that we need to call out terrorism the same way that we call out international terrorism. In other words, now there is, a newer concept of domestic terrorism. So if somebody resorts to terrorism or kills another person for political goals or political aims and uses violence and kills somebody, then it is now a domestic terrorism. So that charge has changed everything, because now it's become an equal balancing act. So although international terrorism is still considered a greater threat because there's possible implications of more people being involved and foreign countries being involved, so it's always going to be on a higher priority. But in the United States, with the kind of violence that we have seen committed by white supremacists, we are now taking domestic terrorism seriously and calling it that. So I think starting to call it that is the first thing, and then getting citizens and community leaders together, Muslim and non-Muslim community leaders, to work towards preventing all forms of terrorism happening and preventing extremism from flourishing is the right solution. And that can be done by communities in conjunction with some government agencies.
Well, thank you so much, Desi Khan, for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, and thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.